Some stories start out as pure science fiction, and then somehow, over time, they start to feel a lot like reality. That's the story of Tron. It's a journey into a digital world that kicked off over 40 years ago, and believe me, it's more relevant right now than ever. I mean, that line from Kevin Flynn, it still gives you chills, right? It perfectly captures what Tron is all about. This dream of crossing the ultimate frontier, of literally getting inside a world made of pure light and information. It's the promise that's been at the heart of this thing from the very beginning. So, here's our game plan. We're going to look back at how the original film changed everything, then track how it built this incredible cult legacy. We'll dive into those iconic sights and sounds, see what's coming next with the new movie, Ares, and finally explore why Tron is so much more than just a game.
All right, let's dive right in. We have to start with the 1982 original. This film was an absolute technical marvel, but it was so far ahead of the curve, the world it wasn't quite ready for it.
The story behind the making of this movie is just wild. It all started back in 1975 when the director Steven Lisberger saw a demo of some very early computer graphics and his mind was just blown. He became obsessed with the idea of making a movie that took place inside a computer. By 1980, he somehow convinced Disney to fund it and brought in an absolute dream team of artists. We're talking legends like Sid Mead designing the vehicles and Mobius doing the costumes. You have to remember, nobody had ever tried to mix this much CGI with live action in a major movie before. They were literally making it up as they went along.
So how did they even do it back then? Well, the tech was fascinating. One of the main CGI companies, a place called Magi, used a process called Synthavision. Now today, we build things with polygons, right? But back then, their system used basic geometric shapes. Think of them like digital building blocks, spheres, cones, cubes. The computer knew these were solid objects, so the animators would just stack them and stretch them to build everything, from the recognizers to the iconic light cycles. And that's actually why the motion in those sequences still feels so incredibly fluid and dynamic. The whole system was just perfect for it.
But man, it was not easy. This stuff was so new that Disney had to hire 4 different and competing CGI companies just to get it all done. The film's effects supervisor, Richard Taylor, said the hardest part was just getting them to speak the same language. Each company had its own custom software, its own way of describing motion or even color. Just imagine trying to stitch all that together into one seamless, believable world. It was a monumental task. And after all that innovation, all that blood, sweat, and tears, this was the result. $33 million at the US box office. The problem was, it got delayed and released into an absolutely packed summer movie season, putting it up against some real giants. I mean, think about it. Tron was up against E.T., Blade Runner, and Star Trek II. It just got swamped. But here's the kicker. Its commercial failure was hiding a massive artistic success. A young animator working at Disney named John Lasseter saw the light cycle sequence and it completely rewired his brain. He said it was like a door to the future of animation just swung wide open. And that moment is what inspired him to dive into computer animation, which, of course, led to the birth of Pixar. A box office flop had just planted the seeds for the next 40 years of filmmaking. Incredible. So, the movie might have stumbled out of the gate, but the story was far from over. Let's look at how the franchise didn't just survive, but actually thrived in the decades that followed, building a fiercely dedicated cult following that kept the grid alive. And for almost 30 years, that's what Tron was, a one-off cult classic. Then, in 2010, boom, Tron Legacy finally arrived, bringing a whole new generation into the grid. That was followed by the amazing animated series Tron Uprising, which fills in the crucial gap between the two movies. And now we know the story continues with Tron Ares. And we have to talk about Uprising. For so many fans, this show is a masterpiece. It took the world building to a whole new level, showing us the daily lives of programs, their jobs, their apartments, even seedy back alley shops. It had this stunning, unique art style and told a really dark, mature story about a rebellion against Clu's regime. And despite all the critical acclaim, it was canceled after just 1 season. Fans are still upset about it, blaming Disney for burying it with poor marketing and terrible scheduling, basically killing a great show that was just hitting its stride. Now, you can't really talk about Tron without getting into the 2 things that truly define the whole experience. Its absolutely revolutionary visuals and, of course, that iconic sound. The music has always been the soul of the grid. For the original film, the legendary Wendy Carlos created a score that sounded like it was from another planet, mixing a full orchestra with these amazing analog and digital synthesizers. Then, almost 3 decades later, Daft Punk did the same thing for a new generation with Tron Legacy. They crafted this masterful electronic score that perfectly blended an orchestra with their signature synth sound. They didn't just write music for the movie, they defined the entire soundscape of the modern grid. And people totally got it. As one fan on Reddit put it, the film basically feels like a 2-hour-long Daft Punk music video. And yeah, that kind of nails it, doesn't it? For so many people, the music was the movie. It wasn't just in the background, it was the whole vibe that made that world feel so immersive and impossibly cool. Which brings us to what's next. After years of development hell, a third film is finally on its way, Tron Ares. And this time, it sounds like the game is changing completely. So here's the big twist. For 2 movies, the story was always about a human getting pulled into the digital world. Tron Ares is flipping that script entirely. Now a program is coming out of the grid and into our world. This is the first time that the humans in this universe will have a direct, physical encounter with a sentient AI being. And could the timing be any more perfect? Seriously. This movie is tapping right into our real-world fascination and, let's be honest, our anxiety with artificial intelligence. The market for AI in filmmaking is projected to absolutely explode from about $1.8 billion in 2024 to over $14 billion by 2033. AI is already reshaping how movies are made, and Heirs is perfectly positioned to be the story that reflects our exact moment in time. So this all brings us to the big question, right? Why does this 40-year-old story about video games and computer programs feel more urgent and more relevant today than it ever has before? Well, from the very beginning, Tron was always playing with these huge, mind-bending ideas. It's basically a cinematic take on things like the simulation hypothesis. You know, that wild theory that suggests our own reality might just be an incredibly advanced computer program? And this is where Tron gets so fascinating, because it forces you to ask these huge questions about our own existence. If we're living inside a system, what are its rules? What even is consciousness? And what are the responsibilities of a creator to the things it creates? And you know, today, that line between the digital fantasy of Tron and our own physical world is getting blurrier all the time. You can literally go to a Disney park, get on a light cycle, and launch into a race on the grid. A digital dream has been made real, letting us physically step into the world that Flynn imagined all those years ago. And that's where we'll leave it. As Tron Ares prepares to bring a sentient program into our reality, the franchise is posing its most provocative question yet. For decades, we've always thought of ourselves as the users, right? The creators in control. But as AI becomes a more powerful and present force in our own lives, you have to wonder, are we still the ones in charge? Or are we just becoming programs in a system we can no longer comprehend? End of line.